Because I think we're talking about something that is meant to be completely taboo. The sole purpose of the clitoris is to give women sexual pleasure. And for decades and, millennia, women have not been thought it was inappropriate to talk about it. And certainly, if you talked about, oh my goodness, I had great sex last night, everyone will be absolutely horrified. And, as a gynaecologist, there's not many human beings I've met in life that wouldn't like to have a good sex life. So, we should make it easy for them women to access contraception, and we should be able to, talk about these things. And I think most important, as was my point when I was saying they're not bad words, and thanks to Aziza and her beautiful tote bag, we've got to talk about body parts by their proper names. And what I'm really impressed with, this is data from the Children's Commissioner and also from the police and from a lot of other people as well, is that when you teach young girls and boys to refer to, body parts with the correct name, so vulva, vagina, clitoris, penis, testicles, scrotum, the whole works, those children are much less likely to be abused because they give off a vibe and then, well, why are you touching my scrotum? Well, why are you touching my vulva? But not why are you touching my funny piece? And what does that mean? Well, when I'm trying to change what people's thoughts are about women's health, which hasn't been talked about much until relatively recently, and in fairness, I've done a lot of the talking of it, haven't I? But what we're trying to do is I want to talk to the men as much as I'm talking to the women. Because there'll be women in your life that you love, all sorts of different relationships, sisters, mothers, aunties, whatever, daughters or not. And what you want is for them to be living a life where they can reach their full potential and that they are not held back by things like body parts. This is an unusual session, I think, and I was quite surprised when someone asked me whether I'd come and do it. I said, yeah, okay. And my daughter said, what on earth are you going to say, Mum? I think they thought they were going to have to uncancel me or something. But I think this is all about putting women's health into the context that it needs to be viewed. So women are 51% of the population and they undertake 68% of the unpaid caring roles, nearly half of the paid caring roles, 80% of household decisions, and every single human being had a mother. So they have a pretty amazing contribution to society. And I'm not pitching women's health against men's health. I want them to work in tandem. But I want women to receive the sort of health and care across their life course that their contribution to society should demand. Well, I was asked to, and I think there was probably an element that they wanted to shock everybody, but I'm up for that. 5 years ago, we wouldn't have had this session. 5 years ago, we could only just about talk about the menopause in quiet rooms and people would be, oh, really? Girls' things, women's stuff, yeah. And now we're talking about it all. And as I was throwing out the challenge, perhaps next year we could talk about urinary incontinence in men and in women to further implement the concept of the women's health hubs. But it's a concept. It's about wrapping care around girls and women, not making them run around the different places being told, no, you can't have that here. I want to scale those up big time because I think that what we've got to do is to get the whole of our society to understand that my daughters, who are in their 30s now, they're going to live longer post-reproductive than they were reproductive. And until very recently, that wasn't the case. So until very recently, politicians and policymakers who worked in the health field thought that maternity was women's health, and it's not. It's a tiny part of women's health. So I want that as an understanding. And I've got 3 things now. My third one will be that I want inquiries about menstrual health and well-being to be in every healthcare professional consultation. Because if you came to see me, say I was an orthopedic surgeon and you cracked your leg skiing or something. If I didn't ask you about what drugs you're taking, what allergies you've got, what operations you've had, you'd think I was a pretty sloppy surgeon. But to the women, no one asks them about their periods and it affects their lives immeasurably. You can't afford to carry on doing it so badly for women. And when they say, oh, well, we haven't got money to scale up health hubs, I say you can't afford not to, because the money we are wasting doing it badly is extraordinary. They're not asking how we're going to adapt the health service to maximise women's longevity in good health. Because we always talk about the things and we talk about cancer, but actually most of the women in that audience who are not actually doctors or nurses believe that they're going to die of breast cancer, and they're not. They're going to die of heart disease. And there is so much we can do. So, can you imagine if we actually tackled obesity effectively, we would have such an impact.